the item on the memorial committee.
Right, so the COVID testing item is our 7A. And then the housing element is the 8B study session. Okay. We've heard from Brian Miller in some previous meeting. I think that name is familiar.
Yes, he's done work for the city for many years.
Okay.
A few years.
Up to 3. Need at least one more for quorum, I think.
Hi, Jared.
I'd be very surprised if Mary Lou joins us from Australia.
Oh, right, yes.
Hello, everyone.
She did say she was going to try, so we'll see.
Yeah.
That'll be very interesting.
I think it's about 17 hours difference, isn't it?
Sounds right. Yeah, definitely like some odd hour there. Oh, and we are not expecting Rick because he was called into service dealing with that fire south of San Carlos.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Marco.
Good evening, Marco.
I'm having a bit of difficulty bringing Kelly into the room. Ah, there she goes.
I think that's everybody that we're really expecting, right? We're up to 5, and Mary Lou's in Australia, and Rick is dealing with fire. So, all right, shall we? Yes. I guess I can wait for Kelly to get her camera and audio in place. There we go. Welcome, welcome. All right, I don't know if you caught Kelly, but we're, oh. We are down Mary Lou in Australia and down Rick dealing with the fire south of San Carlos, but we are at quorum. So Thank you, everyone, for attending the Planning Commission meeting this evening. The Planning Commission will continue to hold meetings remotely via Zoom until such time as it is determined that it is safe to meet in person. If we have attendees in our audience, please know we are happy to hear from you. If you would like to address the Commission during public comment for an item on the agenda, please use the Raise Your Hand button, typically at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When it is your turn to speak, the planning staff will call your name and unmute you, and you will receive 3 minutes to address the Commission. If you are joining us by telephone, you may also address the Commission during public comment by pressing *9, and staff will address and unmute you, probably by your phone number. You will also be given 3 minutes to address the Commission. Please note, anyone in attendance may only speak once per agenda item. Madeline, could we have a roll call?
Yes, Chair Harmon,
Present.
Vice Chair Madden,
Here.
Commissioner Biasotti is absent with cause. Commissioner Durazo,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson is absent with cause. Commissioner Lethen,
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
5 commissioners, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madeline. All right, item 2, roll call 3, Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Lethen, would you care to lead us in the pledge this evening?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Okay. Let me do the other hand. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item 4, approval of minutes. Do we have any concerns or corrections with our minutes? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second them.
Roll call vote.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Chair Madden,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Commissioner Durazo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
5-0, minutes pass.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we have an opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. If there's anyone in our audience who wishes to address the Commission on an issue not on the agenda, please raise your hand at this time.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you, Madeline. All right. Do we have any announcements of conflict of interest this evening? I know we have 2 items that are significant. Sounds like not. All right. In that case, we can move on to our first public hearing. Item number 7A, I understand Mr. Michael Smith will be presenting to us about the temporary use permit for the COVID testing site at 660 El Camino Real. Michael.
Thank you. Let me get this teed up. So good evening, Chair Harmon and members of the Planning Commission, Michael Smith, Planning Department staff. Tonight I will be presenting for your consideration 660 El Camino Real. This is a temporary use permit request for a COVID testing site. The subject lot is located on El Camino Real between Angus and Keynes Avenue and was once designed for use for car sales associated with Melody Toyota dealership, which is located north of the site. The subject lot measures 4,086 square feet and is currently vacant. And it's you can see it there on the map with the white arrow. So the proposal is a request for a temporary use permit by On-Point Testing to continue the existing temporary drive-through COVID-19 testing use on the site for up to 1 year from the date of approval. On-Point Testing is a private testing company not affiliated with county or state services. Testing is done via temporary drive-through, accessing 2 temporary stations located beneath 2 canopies. Traffic cones help guide drivers through the site to the testing location. The facility serves up to 25 customers per day, with 2 customers scheduled at most per every 15-minute time slot through business hours. Most testing is done by appointment, but walk-ins can be accommodated. On high volume days, customers queue within the site, as shown in the site plan attached to the staff report. This will allow traffic to be pulled off the street, and we also set a maximum number of appointments, again, to 2 for every 15-minute time slot. The facility would operate every day from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The typical timeline for the rapid testing at the location is 5 to 15 minutes, and that's pretty much how long it takes to move through the site and receive the test and exit. Participants always remain in their own vehicles as they move through the line. Staff administer the test collection while the participants are in their vehicles, as shown in the image above. And there's also a 20-foot Connex box on site that functions as the temporary mobile facility. There are 5 staff that operate this facility. And lastly, the company is licensed by the state of California for testing. A little bit about the project background. In June of 2021, staff issued the first of 3 temporary use permits, which authorized the testing facility for up to 3 months with each approval. At the time, the region was in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was difficult to get an appointment at a testing facility. Testing was a much-needed service in the community. Although the need for the facility still exists, the need is not as acute as it was 6 to 12 months ago. The applicant was advised with the last staff approval that it would be the final temporary use permit that would be issued by staff, because the combined approvals had exceeded the 3-month time frame allowed for staff approval. The applicant would need to apply for a temporary use permit from the Planning Commission, since the Planning Commission has the authorization to grant approval for up to 1 year. Since the use has really operated on the site off and on since May of 2021, staff has a lot of information about the business's daily operations. The only detriment to the community that has been observed during that period is the traffic queuing on local streets. During the holidays of 2021, the facility experienced a steep increase in customers as the region experienced a surge in COVID-19 cases, coupled with the public's desire to congregate for the holidays. The facility was not prepared for the sudden increase in customers, which resulted in significant traffic queuing on El Camino Real and Angus Avenue, for which the city received a number of complaints. City and police staff worked with the applicant to address the traffic queuing issue, which resulted in some customers being turned away for service, and traffic queuing has not been an issue since the customer spike during the holidays. There's also a condition of approval number 15 that is attached for your consideration, also addresses the traffic queuing should it arise in the future, since we can't really predict what's going to happen with the pandemic. Public notices were mailed for this meeting, and no comments have been received. Temporary use for a site that would otherwise be vacant. So these are some of the reasons we think that would actually why we're recommending approval. It's a temporary use for a site that would otherwise be vacant. There's a low intensity use under normal business conditions, and the need is actually there's a need for this service in the community. Especially for those without health insurance, since On Point does take people without health insurance. So this is concluding my presentation on the item. Staff is recommending approval based on findings 1 through 3 in the staff report, and conditions of approval 1 through 15. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And we're just hearing from you, the applicant on point is not themselves presenting this evening?
We do have, Courtney is here representing On Point, and so
sorry, I was just asked if she wanted to speak before we move to questions.
If possible, I would like to, there's just a little bit more information about On Point and how we operate and serve the community of San Bruno that I would just like to add if possible.
Certainly.
So as Michael stated, we do offer, here, 1 second. Am I able to share my screen?
Do we need to get authorization for that from Madeline, or?
You should be able to.
Let me share. Okay, are you able to see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes.
It's showing the slide, like not the presentation view. It's showing the design view, but we can see it.
Oh, did it not change just now?
If you have two monitors, you may be sharing the wrong one.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely the design view, not the slideshow view.
Okay, give me 1 moment. So sorry. Okay, how's that?
That looks correct.
Okay. So as Michael stated, we're requesting the temporary use permit from the Planning Commission. So our corporation was formed in 2021. We operate in Florida, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Washington, Oregon, and California. We have a total of about 28 sites throughout these 7 states, but the majority are actually here in California, heavily focused in the Bay Area. And San Bruno was actually one of our first sites that we started operating in. We provide 3 different types of tests that suit the public needs. So we have the antigen test, which results in 30 minutes or less. This is very popular for the customers who just need a result to know, have they contracted COVID, something along those lines. Some travel companies do accept those, but oftentimes not so much. PCR, as you all know, is that gold standard test that we also offer, results in 48 to 72 hours. And then lastly, we offer this new test, the molecular diagnostic, and that's in 5 hours or less, and it's actually accepted by almost every venue of travel. I think there's only a few international airlines that do not accept it. So we do offer a wide variety of tests for a wide variety of customers, depending on if you just need a test for yourself at a price point of $69 at antigen, going all the way up to $149 at the PCR. So it's reasonably priced, and like Michael said, we do service anyone. So whether you have insurance or not, we can get you tested. And as he stated before, COVID has started to decline, but that also means testing sites have closed, and they still need to be tested. So we offer that to the community of San Bruno and allow anyone who needs that test that may not have been able to get one because, government sites are closing or other free sites, pop-up sites like ourselves are closing. So we do still offer that for the community of San Bruno. Now, I know in the past we did have a seasonal spike during the holidays where our traffic had queued, and as stated before, we weren't prepared for that spike. However, knowing what the spike can be, we are fully ready and able to handle the volume that we get, either A, by queuing in 2 lines to go under both canopies. Since we do have 2, currently we only queue in 1 line that's split into the 2 canopies if needed at the end of the line. So if we do have that higher volume of traffic, we'll split into those 2 lines and go through the canopies. If anybody starts blocking traffic, we do have 5 parking spots that we can ask them to park in, and they can either be tested right there in their car, or we can ask them, to go in the line to rejoin once the line has come from the edge of the parking lot. Worst case scenario would be that we would just turn them away and send them to our San Francisco site, which does have more parking because it is like a street site. They can just go and park on the street or any parking lot near the site. Like Michael stated, we're setting the maximum appointment to 2 customers per 15 minutes if this does occur, and we're also prepared to staff the site more heavily as well to ensure that the traffic does not block up into the street. We generally have 5 to 15 minutes per customer, and if we do see this time increasing and we're blocking into the site, then we'll just go ahead and pull another employee onto the site to assist with that high volume. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any just clarifying questions from the commission at this time before we move on to public comment? I see a hand from Commissioner Durazo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Courtney, quick question for you. I was interested in, I know in the holidays there was an unfortunate spike and you talked about a high volume season. What does the volume look like, say, this week? I mean, how many folks are actually accessing the services and getting tested? Can you give me an estimate?
Yes, that's a great question. Currently, we're looking at about 250 to 300 customers per week. So on our highest volume site during the holiday season, we were seeing anywhere from 700 to 1,000 customers per week. So it's definitely a lot more customers than we're getting right now. But like I said, you know, we've learned from the past. We know now how to better assist that volume by, you know, like I said, queuing in those 2 lines. We're going to work with the landlord as well so that we can access that full site to make our lines much longer because the landlord does have the vacant car lot behind us as well. So we're going to work with them so that our queue line can be longer if needed. We're going to add additional staff, just ensure that we can all work harmoniously to provide this service to the community.
Cool, thank you. I had a second question, but you actually just answered it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Madden, or sorry, Vice Chair Madden.
Yeah, one question for Michael. Have there been any other complaints about service, or is it purely traffic? Because I personally did not have a good experience at this test site.
No one's contacted staff regarding any other aspects of this business. The only issue was traffic queuing, and that was specific to the holiday season.
Is that because it's on a public street, or would, if someone had complaints, they would go to a different department in the city?
Well, the city as a whole received a lot of complaints because the traffic had queued down to Angus and then around the corner a few vehicles. It was blocking access to the parking for the building at the corner of Angus and El Camino Real. So that was one of the reasons why we had received those calls.
Okay, so if someone complained about some kind of service issue, would that get to you, or would that not get to you?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I just want to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anybody else. I actually had COVID about a month ago. I had a home test. I was positive. I went to get the PCR test at this location, paid the money for the 5-hour test, and 5 weeks later, I still haven't gotten the result. So I hope that's not happening to other people.
Oh, no. That is definitely an anomaly. Have you contacted our customer service so we're able to assist you?
I tried to email. I got a bounce back. I haven't had time yet to make the phone call, so hopefully it'll be made right. But that was my experience this last time I used it. So I'm glad to hear that no one else has complained to the city about it. But yeah, if just wanted to let you know that happened to me.
I definitely do apologize for your experience. That's not the type of experience that we want to cultivate for the community. If you'd like, you can email me, and I can look into what happened with your results and maybe even look into doing a refund if there was an issue of us sending it. I just want to make sure that you're taken care of. We don't want any of our customers to be unhappy.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Didn't mean to air my own personal issues here, but I didn't know this was going to come up. So thanks.
No, it's okay. I understand.
All right. I'm not seeing any other hands. I had two thoughts myself. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Durazo, you did have a second question.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chair. I think I raised it right when you started speaking. I'm happy to go right after you since I've already asked them.
Yeah, you can go ahead. It's all good.
Courtney, last question. You mentioned that the services are accessible for folks who are uninsured. Do you give a number? I mean, how many folks actually came through or uninsured? Is it a percentage of the folks coming through? How many are we talking about there?
So we don't actually have any numbers on insurance. We don't work with any insurance at all. That's how we're able to offer the price points that we are. We do offer a receipt for the service. So if the customer would like to go to their insurance and get that reimbursed, they are able to. But we don't have a distinct number of insured versus uninsured.
Great, thank you. Defer to you, Chair.
All right. So my first question was, so the period where we had the issue with the traffic, that was the Christmas 2021 into, so it was like sort of the before, like this last December, basically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I was looking up some statistics. It looks like for San Mateo County, we peaked at a 7-day average of cases somewhere in the low 2000s, and then we have had a more recent kind of broader wave where it was rolling at around 500 for quite a while, which was starting to come down. And it sounds like at that kind of 500 level, it's really been sustainable. That we haven't had any issues at all through with the traffic.
To my knowledge, yes, sir. We haven't had any issues.
Does that sound about? I mean, you haven't heard any more complaints over the summer, Michael?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. In fact, my office window looks out on the space, and so I can see it on a daily basis.
So if anything goes wrong, you're going to be on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had, which I don't know that it matters exactly, but I was curious to understand whether having something operating here has tax revenue implications for the city. That I guess we get the property tax either way. Although if the property owner wasn't getting any income from that, they might go bankrupt and not pay it.
Yes, the business does have a business license, and so they do have to pay the tax. Courtney, do you charge a tax on top of your services?
I don't believe that we do. It's just the test cost.
Yeah, I think my understanding is medical services typically are among the sort of the critical things that sales tax doesn't apply to.
That's correct.
All right, that was just the two questions I had at this time. We would be open for comments from the public if we have any public with us.
There are no hands raised, Chair.
All right, do we have a motion to close our public hearing?
I make a motion we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon?
Aye. Aye.
Vice Chair Madden?
Aye.
Commissioner Durazo?
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
At this time, do we have any other substantive, the distinction between the clarifying and substantive questions is always interesting, but do we have any more discussion among the requests from the commission for information from staff, or are we prepared to make a motion on the item?
I'm prepared to go ahead and make a motion that we issue a temporary use permit number 22-003 based on findings 1 to 3 and conditions 1 to 15.
I will second your motion.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden?
Aye.
Commissioner Durazo?
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
All right. Thank you for your time, Ms. McFarlane.
Thank you.
Do my notes. And right, there is a 10-day period for appeal if anybody wished to appeal this action to the City Council. All right, item 7, right, that was 7B is our interim automobile sales presentation. Do we have a staff presentation on this one? This is the one from Mr. Miller.
Good morning. Good evening, Chair.
Thank you.
Been that kind of day. Brian Millar, project planner, consulting project planner to the city, and have been processing this project and working with the applicant over the last several months. So this is a proposal for establishing interim automobile sales dealerships for Hyundai and Genesis at the shops at the Tanforan Mall. And so I'm going to see if I can get to sharing screen and move to, there we go. So hopefully that's coming through for you. So a brief PowerPoint presentation, if that's okay, on this. So I'll briefly cover the elements of the project proposal, the project setting at the mall, some of the details of the project description, and some of the key considerations related to this proposed interim use. What the required approvals are from the city in order to allow the project to move forward, and then conclude with the recommendation from staff to the commission and open up for any questions. So starting with project proposal. So we have automobile dealerships that are proposed for Hyundai and Genesis. And these would be involving the former Sears building at the north edge of the mall in Tanforan, and would also include automobile inventory storage in the former retail building, the main building for Sears, both on the ground floor, primarily down in the basement area. Additionally, automobile servicing is proposed in the adjoining former Sears automobile servicing building. There's no proposed expansion of any of the buildings as part of this project, and as mentioned, this is a proposed interim use anticipated for 3 to 5 years. I know the applicant is hoping to certainly have a dealership in place prior to that, and I'll note that the city just in the last few weeks has received a application to establish permanent auto dealerships across the street on El Camino Real, just south of Jack's Restaurant, and crossing the vacant about an acre-and-a-half site there. So that's under process and review right now with the city. And ultimately, that'll be coming back before the Planning Commission on its way up to the City Council for review and action. So the setting again, we've got the mall shops at Tanforan, bounded by Interstate 380 to the south, the El Camino Real off here to the west, Sneath Lane to the north, and Huntington Avenue off to the east. And then the project itself proposes to occupy the former Sears building here at the north end of the mall, and then the outlying service building here just out past the parking garage. A little closer view of that as well, with auto sales and vehicle storage here. Customer parking primarily out in this area, and then auto service areas here to the north, and some additional parking. And then deliveries of vehicles, importantly, is proposed to come using this the existing delivery ramp at the backside, the east side of the mall that provides access down to a series of roll-up doors in the basement of the former Sears building. And then a quick view. This is of the west elevation facing El Camino Real. This would be the primary entrance to the dealerships. In terms of the project description, again, 2 key elements: auto sales and storage in the main Sears retail building, the former Sears retail building, and then automobile servicing, likewise in the former Sears service building. We'll start with the automobile sales. So in terms of occupying the building, relatively minor improvements that are intended by the applicant at this point to the interior, no structural alterations or anything of that nature. The Genesis and Hyundai dealerships would have space on the ground floor for vehicle displays, and then towards the back, east end of that ground floor area, maybe 7 years of vehicles would be stored there as well. The primary vehicle storage would occur down in the basement, and once the use is up and running, the applicant estimates anywhere from 200 to 300 vehicles might be stored in the building at any given time. And then this use for the vehicle sales is expected to have somewhere in the range of 30 employees. And continuing with automobile sales details, there'd be parking primarily out front towards the west, towards the El Camino Real frontage, for 75 non-dedicated spaces out in front of the former Sears building. Vehicles would access the basement storage area using a movable ramp that would provide access for vehicles coming off delivery trucks, basically going up the ramp and into the roll-up doors in the basement. Then they'd be stored there accordingly. Once vehicles are stored, vehicles that would be on display inside the dealership area on the main floor would then be moved up to the main floor primarily from the basement through some rear access doors, and I'll have a picture of that here in just a moment. Operations for the dealership 7 days a week, anticipated typically from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays and Sundays, and from 9 to 7 on Saturdays. So the floor plan that the applicants provided of the former Sears building, main entrance here off of the west, with the dealerships in this area, administrative areas and so forth, and then some vehicle storage here off to the east side of that ground floor. Not a lot in the way of exterior modifications. Essentially, paint is what the applicant is envisioning, sort of sprucing up the building, if you will, and then some signage as well that would accompany that. No structural modifications. And then a quick picture of the primary entrance. This is looking towards that primary entrance from the El Camino Real frontage from the west. Echo off here to the right or to the south. On the interior, this is the now vacant Sears space. And so this would go some minor modifications. I think the carpeting comes out, things of that nature, to provide for Hyundai and Genesis to go in these locations here. This is a reverse view, looking out towards that primary entrance to the west. And again, these would be vehicle storage areas. And then off to the east side of that ground floor, some areas that would be used for vehicle storage, anticipated to be perhaps 7 years of cars. And now heading down to the basement. So this is on the inside of the basement looking out towards those roll-up doors. These would be the primary access points for vehicles to come into the building and be stored. Most of the vehicles, again, stored here on the ground, on the basement floor. Once the vehicles are to be, and this is that existing truck delivery area at the former Sears building, vehicles or trucks would come down here and just basically load inventory or bring inventory in through these doors. Same thing would happen with the proposed auto dealerships, where there'd be temporary ramp where vehicles come off of the truck trailer and then go into the doors to be stored. And then ultimately, if they're going to be moved to the ground floor or put on display inside the dealership, it'd come back out this way and then head over to this east elevation. This is an existing storefront type door. These doors, the modifications here would be just to widen this area sufficient to allow a vehicle to go in and out. Nothing terribly significant, but there would be some modification to the glass in the frame area, not expansion of it. From there, moving on to automobile servicing, applicant anticipates up to about 20 employees at the service center. Parking for that operation would occur on the north side of the building in the existing parking lot. No parking, whether it's for automobile service uses or for automobile inventory storage, employee parking, none of that's proposed in the existing parking garages, I should note. For the automobile servicing, operations are proposed Monday through Saturday from 7:30 to 6. And a couple of quick pictures, and this is as you move from the former Sears building, the main retail building, back past the parking garage area to the existing building. And this area likewise would not go undergo any particular modifications other than paint and sort of sprucing up the building to make it usable again for servicing of vehicles related to the dealership. And the applicants provided this elevation of just how they intend to do that. Some key considerations for the commission. The inventory storage, and just to address that here, primarily occurring down in the basement area, a little bit on the primary ground floor area as well. This is proposed as an interim use, not a permanent use. And so the applicant has formally filed an application to establish Hyundai and Genesis dealerships across the street in the crossing. And I'd say that will be coming back for review before the Planning Commission and City Council. There's no building expansions proposed as part of this interim use at Tanforan. Are noting that the automobile servicing use is a permitted use. There's been a historic use, obviously, with the Sears building at this location, and similar uses at the mall in the past. And some external paint to sort of update the appearance of the buildings for the interim use. And then this project does qualify for an exemption under categorical exemption under CEQA based on the use of the existing facilities. So the required approvals entitlements for this under Planning Commission review and recommendation to Council twofold. One is a minor amendment to the plan development itself, the original ordinance that would specifically call out and recognize the interim auto sales and storage uses at the shops at Tanforan. And secondly, the plan development permit, the enacting permit for the use itself. So those two items are before the city for review. The recommendation from staff to the Planning Commission is for adoption of a resolution, which the Commission would recommend plan development amendment as well as plan development permit approval to allow interim automobile sales and inventory storage at the former Sears facility buildings at the shops at Tanforan, subject to findings and conditions that were provided as part of the Commission. And with that, I will conclude. I will note that the applicant representative, Chris Valera, is, I believe, standing by if there happen to be any questions for him. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just had a very quick clarifying question. The packet says resolutions plural, but it sounds like we're fine to just do a single motion, a single resolution to recommend both of these component actions.
Yes, I believe that is the case. That would allow for the recommendation. That package would then travel up to City Council for.
All right. Did our applicant want to present some material before we take additional questions beyond that?
And I'll see if he had indicated to Chris Valera is his name, and had indicated to him that he can always raise his hand if he did have any comments to make. I think he was standing by in case there were any particular questions.
Okay. No, I will
presentation plan.
Call on Vice Chair Madden.
Thanks for the presentation, Brian. Very good. Questions, I have a couple, maybe a few. When normally buildings that house cars have very stringent ventilation requirements, what is this going to go to the planning or building department, and do they need to provide ventilation for the basement and the showroom on the ground floor due to whenever you're driving a vehicle or carbon monoxide issues? Those structures are normally open. Is there any requirement for them to do that?
I can relay sort of the status on that. The staff, including myself and building staff, have had a number of discussions with the applicant's team and their architect and so forth on this issue. And I know the applicant was working to still provide some additional information to the city just for review to ensure that the ventilation system is adequate and would meet code.
So will this go to the building department? Will they have to get a permit to remodel? And that would be one of the issues that we can make sure is checked off the box, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't comply, especially in the basement.
Yeah, at this point, based on the sort of a twofold answer, if I can. First part is that based on the submitted application materials and the applicant's stated intent of doing minimal modifications, that doesn't appear that there would be a trigger for a building permit.
I think Mr.
Just part two, if I can real quick, is that that being said, the applicant's team, including their HVAC team, is providing information to city building staff for review. And if there is a need for some type of modifications, yes, that at that point would trigger the need for a building permit.
I think just modifying the front door to widen it will trigger a permit. But I guess moving on, will there be an elevator added internally to bring the cars up from the basement, or is it all purely the ramp in the back?
Strictly the ramp in the back.
Okay. And then last question for me is, can you bring up the aerial view where you kind of showed the parking layout? I just want to understand where the dealership is going to have cars outside, if any. Yeah, that one.
Okay. So, oops. Give me one moment here.
Yeah, so where will the dealership have any cars outside?
The applicant has indicated that they may have a few, but not a significant number, if at all. The customer parking area primarily is going to be out here to the.
So the space to the north between Sneath and the building will not be used for cars for sale?
I don't believe that would be the intent. I see the applicant here as well was trying to raise his hand recently, so he could clarify that.
Yeah, Mr. Pilara.
I can give you a little bit of background. One with the storage of vehicles. Typically, there is no. We currently operate over. I think it's over 22 different facilities, and there is typically no additional ventilation for vehicle storage because of the fact that the traffic is not anywhere near what a normal parking garage or something to that effect is. A normal showroom has no additional ventilation systems, excuse me, required, just because the emissions is so small. And with the size of this building, we have our HVAC engineers doing some calculations for the city. It isn't an issue that's even, because of the volume and the amount of cars that would move in and out of the building is so small that with the size of the building and the HVAC system, we'll have, it is far less than a normal car showroom impact. But as for vehicle storage, outdoor storage, the Alexandria is trying to create more traffic down on that end of the building. Our desire is not to have a whole lot of vehicles outside, just for the purposes of security and such. It's easier to have the vehicles contained within the building. If the city would like us to keep more and Alexandria would like us to keep more, I guess we would consider it. But currently, it's not a consideration that we really don't see a much of a need for exterior other than, around the close perimeter of the building, just and more as a display rather than storage lot. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, well, I mean, I know your showroom, there's not a lot of cars in it, but you have this entire basement and the second half of the level one, it looks like you could fit quite a few cars in there. So
sure.
As long as you have it checked and the HVAC people at the city sign off on it, that's great. So if a customer comes and wants to go look at the cars, you have to bring them down to the basement, yes?
Yes, well, there's an elevator within the building. Yeah, we won't be transporting the vehicles up and down.
Okay, so it's been a while since I've been in it, but I don't remember any escalators going down, but I do remember them going up.
There are escalators on both sides for up and down. We don't plan to use the escalators simply for security purposes. We would prefer to use the elevator, just for our purposes. That we feel like it would be easier to just maintain the elevator and not the elevator use or just stairway versus just a regular escalator where somebody could go up and down. They would be escorted downstairs.
Okay, and then is there As far as the parking goes, there's no, I guess I'm asking, is there anything stopping them from filling up that space, Brian, to the north? Could they start putting cars out there and there's nothing the city can do about it? Not that we would be against it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it would go back to the sort of the limitations, if you will, under the PDP itself as approved. And right now that's not identified as part of the application in terms of the intended vehicle parking area.
Okay, and then last question, I know the whole mall is supposed to get, redone into like housing and stuff. The time frame that this allows them to do this, I think it said 3 to 5 years or something. Does that, if that should conflict with any redevelopment, is there any issues there that we need to worry about?
Maybe I can start the answer. I'm not sure, Michael Laughlin, if you want to chime in on this too, but I know that what the city has right now is working towards ultimately what the council identified, sort of a mixed-use vision or concept for the mall, and ultimately that would include some reconstruction, obviously, of facilities on the property. The exact timing of that, at least my understanding of it, has not yet been determined, and that again the intent of this application, this use, is that the PDP would be very specifically for an interim period for 3 to 5 years and not beyond that.
So if a developer wanted to start knocking buildings down in 4 years, do they have to wait for year 5?
Can I add in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, our current plan is to run 2 years with, our lease plan is to run 2 years with a few 3 months extension. Our plan is to be across the street within 2 years, 24 to 27 months is our current target timeline. We have no long-term interest in being in that building.
When you say across the street, where exactly?
In the property across the street next to Jack's.
Yeah, across El Camino Real to the west, there's a vacant, I think the primary remaining vacant piece of land at the crossing. South of Jack's, this was the site that had been previously considered for a hotel development fairly recently by the city. And now the intent is through Mr. Valera and his application that's been filed is to establish a permanent building for Hyundai and Genesis dealerships at that vacant 1.5 acre site.
Are you talking about the
process by the city?
Are you talking about the small dirt lot next to Jack's?
To the south side.
Can you back up a slide? I'm not sure if you showed the.
I can go back. So this area over here, if you can see it on the screen, is the location for the dealership.
That gray portion has been used as overflow parking by Jack's for a while, but this would cover the brown portion as well.
And so this 1.4 acre piece here is what is now the subject of this new application that would involve things like general plan amendments and specific plan amendment, and that will ultimately come before the commission for review, again, ultimately going to city council.
Wow, okay. That's a tiny street. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
I see a hand from Michael Laughlin.
Oh, yeah, thank you through the chair. I did want to address a couple of comments or questions from Vice Chair Madden. In your packet, you'll be taking 2 actions tonight. There's 2 resolutions. One is regarding the ordinance. The other is regarding the plan development permit. Attached to the plan development permit, there are conditions of approval, and there are conditions it's page 29 in your packet. There's no condition number 4 is no automobile inventory storage shall be permitted in the shops at Tanforan parking garages. So there is that restriction. There is not a condition specific to the surface parking lots around the building. Number 5 is there shall be no display of automobiles for sale within the shops at Tanforan. And then there's condition 7 regarding deliveries, that deliveries should only occur in the driveway bays at the rear east side of the retail building at the basement level. So we do have those conditions that are part of the conditions of approval in the plan development permit.
And I mean, I guess if thinking about this, like if there was a concern with, cars being parked in that north parking lot, I mean, fundamentally this is private property. The operator of the shops at Tanforan would be, if they had an objection to that, they would be able to enforce that private right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I had one other question of my own in regard to the service building. And my understanding, my recollection, is that Sears was conducting a fairly wide range of auto services in that building already, handling brake fluid, oil changes. And so I think that, doing auto service in this building, it has sort of no bearing on the history of the site in terms of what kind of soil remediation or other, interventions would have to happen as this eventually gets converted into office and housing. Because frequently, with auto service, there, you do have to conduct a study and remediate the soil, because of toxicity issues. But if I'm understanding right, because it already has been used for that, it makes no difference, right? Like whatever would need to be done already needs to be done, and so there's no delta to this. And I just wanted to make sure that's correct.
I believe that is correct.
Can I give a little color background to it?
Sure.
As far as that's concerned, we are one of the most heavily regulated I guess you'd say one of the most industries that, I mean, the property has already gone through full phase 1 in the sale to Alexandria, and we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a contamination issue, at that point, because we are heavily regulated and don't want to be held to what Sears, the old standards compared to today's standards are far different.
I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. That was the only additional question I'd had. Coming back to the issue of the resolutions, I scrolled down through the packet again, and I see we'll have 2 separate resolutions, which are 2022. Are they 08 and 09? Yeah. So, all right. At this time, we should be open for public comment. Do we have any hands in the audience on this issue? Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized Vice Chair Madden had raised his hand again. I apologize.
No worries. Sorry. Your question made me ask or think of another question. Does anyone know, is there a fuel station at the service building at all? And if not, has anyone looked at any traffic implications of, them going over, filling up their cars with gas at the nearby gas station?
Not aware of any fueling stations or the like at the service building.
There is currently none.
Okay, so I know there is I think a Shell station on the corner right across the street. Not the easiest to get to, and anyway, I'm hoping that this isn't any worse than when the mall was in its heyday. So I think it'd be fine. So.
I can give you a little food for thought. If we do extremely well, you're looking at anywhere from, call it, 3 to 8 cars a day. I'd be really happy if it exceeded that, but I don't. The volume of traffic shouldn't be that great as far as inventory vehicles. I hope it would, but I don't. It would be significant if it did.
And just as a clarifying question, it is like thinking about sort of how service centers operate. I mean, do you typically top up the tank for customers? I mean, that seems like, I don't think people have done that for me back when I had a, so like it's, they bring the car, they drop it, they come and pick it up. They don't, there's no.
And in the New Day area with Genesis, era with Genesis, a lot of it is actually concierge, where we go to the customer, bring them a vehicle, and pick up theirs, bring it back to them. So a lot of them won't even actually come into the building.
All right, thank you. Okay, I guess I can check again. Do we have any hands in the audience? Do we have any public comment?
There are no hands raised, Chair.
All right, do we have a motion to close our public hearing?
I motion that we close our public hearing.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
All right, thank you. I will just ask if there are any further questions, any further comments from the commission. Not seeing any immediately, I will myself make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-08, recommending amendments to ordinance 1087, regulating land uses at the shops at 10 Florence.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
Would somebody like to make our motion for the other resolution, or shall I?
I go ahead and I recommend we issue a permit to allow interim automobile sales and inventory storage at the former Sears facility buildings at the shops at Danfran, subject to findings 1 to 3 and conditions 1 to 12.
All right.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
All right. Thank you for your time, Mr. Miller and Mr. Polara.
Thank you very much.
All right. Returning to our agenda, that brings us to the end of our public hearings. And I believe we have a presentation from Michael Laughlin regarding the Memorial Recognition Subcommittee.
Yes, so the Memorial Recognition Committee and process was started in 2012 to recognize key members of the community. And there's currently a need to convene the committee because they have 2 nominations before them. And so the city clerk has asked that we come to you, the Planning Commission, and see if we can get 2 members who would be willing to serve on that committee. I don't believe it would be a huge commitment. They would probably have, I'm not even sure how many meetings they would actually hold, whether it would just be 1 meeting or a couple to make a decision on the current applications and requests. So I apologize, I don't have more information on that, but the meetings would be scheduled at hopefully at times that are mutually agreeable to the committee members that are selected. So I would imagine they'd be, probably evening meetings for the most part. So if we can get two people that might be interested in that commitment.
We have any volunteers? I'm sorry Mary Lou is not with us this evening, given her just deep history in the community. She seems like if she would have been an apt candidate.
I'd be willing to do it as long as it works around my schedule. So it's not, yeah, I'm not sure if it's like this where it's like the third Tuesday of every month, or I'm not sure how frequent it needs to be, but it could be fairly flexible. I could be able to do it.
Was that you volunteering, Marco?
Yeah, count me in.
Great. Yeah, I would consider volunteering, but I'm already doing the recreation subcommittee on top of this. So I appreciate folks' willingness to step up. Do we need to call a vote to confirm those appointments?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
If everyone's in agreement, I'm not hearing any
consensus. Acclamation. All right. Thank you. Then we can move on to our study session on the draft housing element. All right. Okay. Good evening, Chair Harmon and members of the Planning Commission. Michael Smith, Planning Department staff again. I'm going to give you tonight's presentation is to update the Planning Commission on the status of the 2023 to 2031 housing element update process, and just get your input on staff's direction that we've charted so far. So staff will walk you through the relevant sections of the draft housing element that includes the 6-cycle RHNA allocation, how the city meets its RHNA allocation through the housing site inventory. We will outline how staff developed the housing policies and goals to implement the RHNA allocation, and conclude the presentation with the overall housing element adoption schedule. A similar presentation was made to the council late last month when the document was released for the 30-day review period. Staff will soon forward the city's draft housing element to HCD for their 90-day review, and that's the big review. Once HCD's comments are received from that 90-day review, an updated draft will be prepared by staff and made available to decision makers and the public this fall. All public comments received will be attached to the document when forwarded to HCD for review. So along with the housing element release of the draft, which happened on May 24th, and we'll wrap up this Friday on June 24th, the staff did set up a website where folks can review the document and review everything we've done to date to get that document to where it is. I'm the department's lead, and so I'm taking all feedback and comments on the document. So I have my name and my email address is there for anyone in the public who wants to review the document and submit their comments. Also, hard copies of the document are available at City Hall, at the Community Development counter, and also at the City Library. So over the past year, the City of San Bruno, its residents, and stakeholders from across the region have participated in outreach and engagement efforts for the housing element update, and it is with great excitement that we released the draft last month. The housing element itself, because most of you are new to the Planning Commission, you may not have actually be familiar with the housing element process, but the document does establish goals, policies, and programs to help the city address the city's current and future housing needs, and includes a list of recommended housing sites. It is the city's blueprint for housing-related decisions for the next 8 years, and sets an action plan for how to meet housing goals during that period. The housing element consists of extensive analysis on housing needs, housing constraints to housing production, and new for this cycle, fair housing assessment, housing resources, public engagement is a big piece,
and previous accomplishments during the current housing cycle, as well as I said, the housing sites inventory and goals, policies, and programs. The draft housing element and technical appendices, again, are available on our website. But for today's presentation, I wanted to focus on two key aspects of the housing element update, and that is the site inventory, which is the proposed methodology, sites inventory showing the city and how it's meeting its RHNA, and then also the proposed goals and programs for the housing element and how we arrived at them. So starting off with the RHNA, for the sixth cycle, the RHNA is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. It's a key component of the draft housing element, and it includes an identification of potential housing sites that can feasibly be developed to satisfy the RHNA allocation. This year, the city was given a RHNA, or this cycle, I should say, was given a RHNA of 3,165 units. I don't have it on the slide, but for comparison purposes, the previous RHNA was 1,155 units. So it was a very steep increase in the amount of units that we got allocated this year. And just so you know a little bit how the RHNA allocation process works, is the state gave the region, so that's the Bay Area region, a number of units to account for based upon anticipated growth. And as everyone knows, we are experiencing a housing crisis. So needless to say, there was a lot more units that we got assigned this year. And then from there, our regional governing body, which in this case is ABAG, Association of Bay Area Governments, allocates them to the different communities within the Bay Area. And before that, they actually allocated them to the different counties. So I believe San Mateo counties was somewhere in the neighborhood of 41,000 units, and of that, San Bruno got 3,165. Now, they also recommend that that we have a buffer on top of what they've allocated us, because they want to make sure that we're able to accommodate, and so we need to have almost like a reservoir of sites should things not get developed in the manner we anticipated as housing. And so they recommend a 15% buffer, and that bumps it up even higher to 3,640 units. And so on this table here on the slide, you can see how that's divided by income category. First column is very low income, moderate income, and market rate, and then you can see the percentages there as well. So this table shows how the city or how staff went about trying to accommodate the RHNA from the various different project types. We like to call them buckets. So this first one at the top is pipeline projects. Those are projects that are generally have already been approved by the city or anticipated to be approved before the end of this year. And so you can see that there's 670 units. These are not units that are built yet. A large chunk of those units came with Mills Park, and that accounted for 427 units. And then there's another 1,293 units that we've identified in other sites that are in the TCP. And then as we talked about with the last project that you guys talked about, the Tanforan and Alexandria is the new owner, and we are envisioning 1,000 units at the Tanforan site at a minimum, and so we're already in discussions for that, and they understand, the new owners understand what our vision is for the site. And then accessory dwelling units, we're estimating 345 accessory dwelling units. Over the past 2 years, we've had, I think we've gotten over 50 one year and over 60 in 2021. And so looking out over the next 8-year cycle, getting to 345 would be about 43 plus units a year. And then lastly is the Bay Hill specific plan. So the Bay Hill specific plan included an overlay zone for 520 odd units. And looking at those overlay zones, which include 3 different properties, we saw that about 415 were more likely to be developed, and so we've added that to the list as well. And that brings us to our total here of 3,723 units. And our goal, again, was 3,640 units, and that is our RENA plus the buffer. So a little bit about the pipeline projects. As I said, we're looking at 670 units. These are projects that you guys are pretty familiar with that have come to you in the past. And this is how we arrived at those 670 units. And so, as I said, Mills Park was the biggest tally in that 670. And then going on down the list, we have 500 Sylvan at the bottom, 732 El Camino Real, which is an SB 35 project, so you guys actually did not see that one. And then 271 El Camino Real, which was approved earlier this year, or it's hard to forget now. And then we have 111 San Bruno Avenue and Glenview Terrace, which you guys saw in April of this year. And again, these are the unit tallies. This is the different income ranges. You can see the status of those projects right here. So those have been entitled. Those are the ones you've already seen. And actually, this now Glenview Terrace can now be updated to, well, it's not quite entitled. It still has to go through City Council. So it'll remain under review at this point. And then, so you can see what's happening. For the TCP sites, these are and other sites, TCP and other sites, so not all the sites are in the TCP. This is a map of the other sites we've identified throughout San Bruno, and so there's a total of 23 sites. This map is actually an enlargement of a portion of the site's inventory map. And then right here, this magenta outline that you see on the map along both El Camino Real and San Bruno Avenue and Huntington Avenue, that's the boundary for the TCP. And so we tried to identify as many sites in that boundary as we could. And so these are the ones we have, and you can see the names of them, the keys to the site over here on the left-hand side of the map. There are some sites that are a little further afield. So number 6 over here in brown is the Engvall School site. And then these are the 2 Bay Hill sites. And then over here, number 14 is the Tan Fran site. And that's also the Tan Fran site on Huntington Avenue as well, that vacant lot. So that gives you kind of a flavor. And I've also included the census tract information underneath here because that is another big piece of the puzzle of how we convey the information to HCD. So again, ADUs are a piece of the puzzle of how we're going to meet our RENA for the next cycle. So again, I talked about 55 having been entitled in 2020. A key thing here is that HCD looks at how many building permits you issue for ADUs. In 2020, we were actually still doing a 2-step process. So that kind of hampered our ability to issue building permits somewhat, but we still did receive 55 applications, or entitled 55 ADUs applications during that period. And then again, last year in 2021, we got 68. And so again, reaching 345 ADUs over the next 8 years is going to be about 43 units per year. And seeing as how we received 55 applications in 2020 and 68 in 2021, we think that we could meet the 345 over the next 8-year cycle. For the Bay Hill specific plan, I said that we had identified 2 sites, even though the plan allowed for a total of 573 housing units. We thought those at Cherry Avenue and the office building at 801, 851 Traeger Avenue were the most likely to develop in the 8-year cycle. These were also the property owners who were most interested in the housing development option as the plan was going through the process. So next, I'm going to now transition away from the RENA process and talk a little bit more about how we went about developing our goals and policies in this housing element. So this is kind of a small snapshot of some of the analysis that formed the basis of our recommended goals and programs. In the draft housing element, you will find a lot more analysis covering housing topics such as demographics, housing needs, constraints to housing, and housing resources. Input to goals and programs, we looked at existing goals and programs in our existing housing element and saw which ones were working and which ones were not. Those ones that were working were kept, and those that weren't were jettisoned. We reviewed our current housing needs, and then again, affirmatively fair housing. That's a new requirement. And then we also looked at our public outreach process and what was the information we got from the public through that process, including a survey, which we also have running right now, which has been running since March, and that will close this Friday as well. And to date, we've received over 420 responses to that survey. That survey was put in people's utility bills. It was put on the city's social media account and also in the city manager's newsletter. So we're pretty happy with the amount of responses we've received to the survey. And through those different data inputs and the surveys and the public outreach, we came up with these overarching housing goals. There's 8 of them that kind of form the basis, and then within these 8 overarching goals, there are specific programs that are in the housing element that would achieve these goals. So I'll just read them. Improve the development review and approval process, increase the availability of housing throughout the city, protect current residents from displacement, support the needs of households with low incomes and special needs, improve the city's management of its affordable housing portfolio and housing funds, preserve the affordability of existing at-risk affordable housing, promote sustainable residential development that is energy efficient and reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and then lastly, promote equity in housing. So as I said before, to get the public involved in the process over the last year and a half, staff met with fair housing advocates, service providers, housing developers, hosted an introductory housing element meeting and ADU workshop. We also did public outreach that was conducted through 21 Elements. That's the overarching umbrella organization for the 21 jurisdictions in San Mateo County. In addition, staff held 2 community meetings. Those were held in May. Launched a community survey, which is what you see on the screen here. That's the link to that survey. And then again, we advertised everything on social media, on Channel 1, the utility bill inserts. We did a flyer distribution to downtown businesses, and then again, all of these efforts have been incorporated into the draft housing element, and we are going to be forwarding that to HCD at the end of the 30-day process. The 30-day review process for the housing element ends again on Friday, and so in early July we'll be forwarding it to HCD for their big 90-day review. So I'm going to go a little bit into the schedule, and so this is what we're looking at as far as schedule. So at the top is that public review period that we're in right now. We have the study session for today that we're doing with you, and submitting to HCD in early July, and again, that's a 90-day process. Then we'll, in September or thereabouts, we'll get their comments back. And so far, what it looks like with HCD is that they're receiving these documents, and so there's a little bit of silence for about a month or so, and then they're starting to reach out to staff, the different jurisdiction staff working on the housing elements, and have conversations. So it's not like 90 days go by and we won't hear anything and then get something dropped on us on the 90th day. There's a lot of communication back and forth with HCD staff along the way. And then in the fall and into the early winter is we have our hearings for adoption, and we're hoping to submit to HCD by December 15th, and it needs to be certified by them by the end of January. Now, the Bay Area is kind of later in the schedule, so the Sandag region, which is San Diego, has already gone through this process, and right now the Southern California region is going through this process, which is the LA Basin area, yeah. So we're hoping, we're pretty excited about it. We think you know that we found a lot of good sites and a lot of good programs, and we're hoping that HCD feels the same. And this concludes my presentation for it. And again, this is where you can find it, and this is how you can submit your comments.
All right, thank you, Michael. At this time, do we have any clarifying questions from the commission? Oh, wait, there we go. Commissioner Lethen.
Yeah. Just really quickly, the numbers that we are meant to meet in our arena allocation, do they need to be fully built out in the 8-year period, or do they need to be entitled, or what I've just seen as the project that we've been seeing coming through, that many of them are approved and then they just kind of stall. And so I'm just curious how that affects our arena scores and how it contributes to the numbers that we're trying to meet.
Excellent question. So HCD counts it based on building permits issued. So that is why, for instance, Mills Park, which has not applied for a building permit to construct that project, cannot be included towards our current arena because there was no building permit issued. And if they were to even apply for a building permit tomorrow, that wouldn't count. It wouldn't count until it's issued in HCD size. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, just a question. Do we know what's happening on the Mills Park? What the delay is there?
We don't know. I'm not sure if Michael knows. I do know that they have a DA, which gives them a development agreement, that is, that gives them a certain amount of time to construct that building. It is a big project. There's 2 different buildings, and I know that there's a lot of money that goes into making construction drawings. So there's that to include in the process. But I don't know if you want to add anything, Michael.
Yeah, they have submitted a request to extend their entitlements. So we'll be reviewing that this fall. So that's about all I know at this point, is that just because of I think difficulties, I think they were trying to perhaps sell the project. They've also been looking at, you know, some of the issues and costs, you know, building it as well. So they're trying to overcome some obstacles, I think, on their end to develop the project.
I see. One other question. There was talk before of building up over the shopping center at Bay Hill. Is there any prospect of that idea going ahead?
Yes, we did include 851 Cherry in our sites inventory list, and so that is one of the Bay Hill properties. They were the ones who did indicate some agreement for adding housing to that site, so we've included it on the list.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So I had a question. I have recollection that the transit corridors plan, as it was adopted and as what was presented to the public, that was the subject of Measure N back in 2014. That vision was identifying the southern triangle of just north of where San Mateo Ave hits El Camino, so that where the triangle where the gas station is, and then the block to the north of it, that was identified as sort of this anchor site. I forget the exact terminology, transformative site. And I did see some of the individual parcels of that included on this list, and I was unclear whether we've sort of batched up all of those parcels in a way that sort of represents that ambition of really building a substantial integrated mixed-use building there, which is supposedly what we voted to do, and whether there is any process for identifying a developer that would be interested in that, or a program to make it more attractive, like what the status of that is, and whether that could be used to increase the yield of that segment of our inventory.
Okay. So what you're referring to is in the TCP, they identified 3 different catalytic sites, and they were sites that were identified that they thought that if they were developed, they would catalyze other sites to develop nearby within the TCP. One of them, I believe, was the site that you're talking about, and I think another one might have been 111 San Bruno there at the corner of Huntington and San Bruno Avenue. And then I think the third one was the Cal train parking lot. So those are the 3 different catalytic sites. The one that you're talking about is still on our list. It has been divided up into separate properties, so we're not necessarily looking at it as one huge or one larger development. However, that said, we wouldn't, someone could still come in the door to develop all the properties at the same time. But what we're finding out is that lot consolidation in the city can be very, very difficult. So you have multiple business owners, and then it's just really hard to put those kind of projects together. And I believe that catalytic site had potentially that whole block, I think, in it. And so it was really hard for staff to kind of include a whole block and tell HCD that we thought that this could reasonably turn over and produce the kind of development we want in the next 8-year cycle, because no developers have really come to staff to really talk about developing the sites in that manner. So we had to kind of reevaluate how we thought this site was developed and which ones were more likely to develop in that. And so with that, we looked at the gas station itself. So we still think the gas station is likely to develop. We looked at the furniture store, Bedroom Express, which is right behind it, also likely to develop. And then we also looked at the B of A as a site that is likely to develop. But again, if someone wants to come and develop in the vision that was envisioned in the TCP as a catalytic site, we are all ears.
Yeah, I guess, I have sort of 2 branches. One is, these numbers are anticipating using full zone capacity, whatever the 5-story in this section?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I wonder, it would be nice to sort of deliver what the people voted for. And I don't know if that would, it would mean, like that, as we've seen with something like Mills Park, there's been construction inflation. Who knows what else is going on that's slowing them down. And we've seen the project at the northeast corner, the 111. That one is, I guess I understand it is being somewhat reduced because of some kind of issue with consolidating the lot there. And I question whether, is there something we could be doing to adopt programs that would, and changes in policy and streamlining that would make these projects more attractive, such that a developer might step forward and say, oh yeah, if that's the terms, then it's attractive to me to start buying up, to make serious offers on buying up these properties and consolidating them. I'm actually, I am in a lot of cases skeptical of consolidation. I actually think fine-grained development and small, the sort of small is beautiful in many hands. My natal town of Ellicott City has a lovely downtown that's very, fine-grained small businesses, and I think that's great. But in terms of the catalytic, the idea that you get big mix, do a few really big improvements that then create the customers who, they have the demand that drives improving more of downtown. It does seem like, you potentially could have a lot more units there if we could credibly say we have a route to get there, but I think it's a little disappointing to see that left chopped up. And especially if, if you do put one brand new building in there, it's then going to become a lot harder to imagine that that original vision would ever come to fruition, because somebody's not going to want to knock that building down in less than, 50 years or something. I see Vice Chair Madden has a hand.
Yeah, just give you a perspective from what I see at work. I'm working on a project right now that's like a 20-story residential building in San Francisco that they consolidated 4 lots to build this thing, and the construction costs are just going through the roof with all this, the war and all these things. And from what I'm hearing, it's like a lot of construction and development has really slowed down because of these costs. And then I think one of the big impediments here, we've talked about this before in several meetings, is our height limit. Being so close to the airport, that it's probably very difficult for the developers to make money. These guys are not do-gooders. I mean, they want to make money. And so things don't really pencil out if they're limited to tiny lots and, 2 or 3 stories. And so I think we just need to be realistic that, I don't know if a lot of this is actually going to happen unless, things improve with just the economy as far as cost of construction, and then giving them more flexibility in these areas that are close to the airport that have height limits. I don't think we can expect someone to come in and build some massive development to get our numbers up without some concessions.
Yeah, I mean, you frequently see with these large developments, like with the Mills Park, we get, whatever, $10 million in public benefit payments that comes with it, and, you sort of, there's always a temptation to kind of, wring as much out of it as you possibly can, which sounds great in the short term, but then if it doesn't actually get built, and like the longer term benefit of a thriving economy that creates the sales tax base and so on, that there's if you run the developments right up to the ragged edge and then events overtake them, it becomes a problem. That's something I'm concerned about. And developers want to make money. So does a restaurateur, right? Nobody's operating Jack's or society. They're not a charity. They want to take home a paycheck. That's fine. My other sort of big concern with the whole sort of TCP and other sites list is, as I understand it, there is specific guidance from HCD on assembling sites like this where you are supposed to account for the probability of development. And I have been reading up on this in the last couple of weeks. There does seem to be some allowance for, rather than exclusively going from a probability based on the previous housing inventory, housing element inventory, because sites from outside of your previous inventory may have developed, you can do a more aggregated, like, total production. We clearly did not hit our overall RENA numbers, so even on the total production basis, we clearly are not going to be at a 100% number for that. And it just seems really unlikely to me, particularly the sites with active businesses in them, that HCD is going to accept counting these at 100% weight. The vacant ones are, I think, more plausible, just because once something's vacant, obviously the landowner it's going to be very attractive to them to do something with it and put it to use. But without some kind of, like, what is it that we are going to do to cause it to become attractive to develop these, to, especially with active businesses where whoever owns it is earning rent, or potentially the business owner owns the land, as uncommon as that may be. This is like, it is a large chunk of our total, right? It's what, 1293, and then of those, the active are, I haven't actually done the math, but like 2/3-ish of that 1293. It's a really substantial portion, and I feel like we are very likely to get dinged on that. So that's a concern for me.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree. I mean, part of the issue is that San Bruno is a built-out city, and so we're not going to find land or vacant land enough for 3,600 units. So then we have to kind of go down to the next tier and look at those properties that have active businesses that are either underperforming or not as valuable as the land that is on them. And so that's where we have to kind of dig a little deeper to find sites. And so, I mean, that's what we have forth, and it will be a conversation with HCD staff to try, to convince them that we think that these sites can turn over for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, this is, thinking as somebody who wants to see our downtown thrive, I would like to see some of those buildings gradually turning over and being developed into things that have, like a multi-story mixed-use character where you've got your retail at the ground floor and, a dentist's office on the second floor and a couple floors of housing, whatever it is, right? That sort of, a thriving town. It's like, what are the specific things we're doing to actually, it's like we're saying we have a goal to streamline the process, but the programs of what is it, what are the things we are actually changing, seem a little underspecified. So I think that's something that I at least would like to convey to City Council as a concern from myself. I don't know if the rest of the commission shares that concern and would want to make sure that's noted and conveyed. I do want to say there is a lot that I appreciate about this. I mean, I really, as somebody that's very, a zoning nerd, and following this process, notoriously the history in California is a lot of cities have not even engaged with this process in good faith. You can find hilarious but sad clips of city councils. Literally, there's a notorious clip of a city council that I will not name where a council member is like, oh yes, you want to pick the sites for the housing inventory that won't get developed. And another council member being like, don't get us sued. And so I really appreciate that the staff is really, actually taking us seriously and producing an inventory where we're trying to actually, and like every one of these sites, even ones that's active, I think, is meritorious. Like, you talk about the one that sprung to mind for me is the San Bruno Pet Hospital because I take my cat there. And, it's directly on El Camino. It's walking distance from BART. I mean, this is clearly an excellent site. So, and just the question is, what do we need to do to make this actually happen? Whether that's a city program of relocation assistance for the businesses to encourage them, like, an incentive for them to move out of this site because we want it built, right? Like there should be some specific thing we are doing that makes these things happen. And then our ADU numbers are excellent, and I'm working on an ADU myself, and really appreciate that the city has implemented an ordinance for that is second to none. Like we have not imposed frivolous, like some cities have basically done the absolute bare minimum of what the state forced them to, and we haven't imposed any additional height limits on the ADUs that you can do a second story within your accessory unit. So I think there's a lot to praise here. I really appreciate the work that staff is putting into it. I just, I really have some serious concerns about this Table 3 TCP and other sites list. With that, are there any other comments from Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what we're not doing that the other cities are doing. Like you look at the development that's going on in Millbrae, San Carlos, all the other cities on the bay. There's development, even South San Francisco. They're building like crazy, but everything in San Bruno seems to be at a standstill. I don't know what the reason is.
Well, I think you're going to see a lot happening. So, we just recently approved the multi-story development at 732, 740 San Bruno Avenue. So hopefully they'll move forward. And then we have the application in for 170 San Bruno Avenue. That one's working, right across from 111. We have a new application in for 111. So those are both by Caltrain. And then we have another application in at 840 San Bruno Avenue. We will be getting the Tanforan master plan later this summer. And so they have guaranteed, that they will be developing the 1,000 units that we are requesting. And, with the at least 15% affordable, we've got the two high school sites, Ingval and Crestmore. We have applications in for both of those for single family residential. So there's a lot going on. And then we have the other entitled projects, which seem to have stalled at 271 El Camino. But we've also had other developer interests where, people have brought in actual, preliminary plans for some of the sites that are in the site's inventory. So we know that there's a lot of pent-up demand and interest in these sites. So I think we're getting there. I think perhaps it took a while to get a TCP plan done, and the voter initiative. So that's a hurdle that other communities didn't have in place that needed to be lifted for a height limit. And then of course we do have the as Vice Chair Madden mentioned, we do have the challenge of the airport as well, both with heights and the noise, which some of the other communities don't have. But anyway, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with all the activity that's coming. We're just a little slower to get there.
It'd be nice to see something actually happening.
Yes.
Yeah, on the height limits, I mean, my I mean, and again, I mean, this is a program that we could discuss including here. You know, the noise limitations have been a concern for me living in the Bel Air neighborhood because we are the neighborhood that's most affected by that. Historically, on the east side of Bel Air, it was effectively illegal to add housing because of you could not intensify the use because of the, I think it's the 80, I forget if it's the 80 or the 75 decibel contour. I believe my understanding is that we concluded that ADUs are now exempt from that because state law overrode the agreement with the Airport Land Use Commission, but you still couldn't, I think it would exclude an SB9 duplex because the duplex is not, anyway. In any case, like there's been these various restrictions, and you know, I've suggested it before, and I'd suggest again, we have the example of the Noor project in South San Francisco where they negotiated a kind of new understanding that it was a one-off thing. And I'm just pointing at that and going, well, why isn't this the new rule for everything? Like, you have an agreement where we say the people who live here will not sue the airport over noise because they moved in and they knew there was an airport there. And, you know, like you just get it in a covenant on the property. And so, you know, if you want to say, okay, here's like a program that frees up housing production in a, you know, the noise contour affected area of San Bruno, well, there you go. And, you know, like the airport agreed to it at least once. So, you know, we can do that for the whole of Bayshore Circle, for the whole of Bel Air. And on the heights, my understanding is that I don't think anybody is discussing, you know, in Bel Air, if you went to 3 stories, I think I don't know whether we're R2 or 3. It might be illegal to do 3 stories in some parts. I'm not certain, but I think it's 2-story. But you know, like I think that the land use height limit is already higher than I think even 5 stories at the east side of town. Like you wouldn't be able to build like a 20-story building, obviously, but I don't think anybody is anticipating height limits anywhere in San Bruno that would hit the height cap. It's pretty much all the noise that's relevant, you know. Like I think that I know I've looked at the airport land use plan. It was like the number for height along El Camino was more like 12 or 15 stories, and nobody, you know, like, you know, we're already at 5. If you had some kind of density bonus thing that took it to 7, you still have to like double it before you hit the airport height cap, is my recollection. So I don't think that's really a concern for that. But yeah, I mean, does our housing element call out the plan to extend the TCP 5-story for the whole length of El Camino? Because that also, you know, changing the San Bruno Pet Hospital site, which is currently 3 to a 5, would make it more attractive, one would think. So it'd be sort of another piece of evidence that we're doing something to make this qualify.
Yeah, so one of the things is we have not gone into detail about the programs that we are, you know, envisioning for this draft. And one of those programs is to evaluate and start the process for seeing the feasibility of raising the height limits along El Camino Real. So right now, the stretch of El Camino Real between Crystal Springs and the 380 freeway is within the TCP. And so everything else on El Camino Real, north and south of that, is not in the TCP and is subject to the 50-foot 3-story height limit. And so we do have a program to take a look at that and whether or not the city of San Bruno has the stomach to raise those height limits there. And so that is a program we are envisioning.
Okay, well that's great, as long as that's moving forwards. I don't think I have anything else at this time. If any of the other commissioners have any further questions, comments? Not seeing any hands. Do we have any public contributions at this time?
There are no hands raised, Chair.
No chairs raised.
No chairs raised.
All right. Thank you, Madeline. All right. Obviously, no specific action on this at this time since it's a study session. Do we even need like a motion to close the hearing, or are we just good to move on?
I can just move on.
All righty. Items from staff. Do we have any?
No, I just did want to inform you that we are planning to cancel the July ARC meeting. We do not have any agenda items at this time.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Do we have any items from the members of the commission? Seeing none, our next regular meeting is, I believe, July 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Our meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much for your time.